Today I'm going to show you how I finish my frames that I use for my art paintings. And I normally work in bulk. I probably have 20 or 30 frames going at once. That's my cat Willow. So here I am. It's kind of monotonous in a way, but also therapeutic. You just start with one and just keep moving through. So here I spread on some acrylic red primer. I just choose red because I like the way that it shows through the gold once I leave this. But I spend my time taking this fairly slowly and make sure that the paint is level and there's no big chunks anywhere. I load the brush pretty heavy. And it's quick drying. So you want to move methodically, but also not too slowly so that you get any big lumps or chunks. If you have big brush strokes in the frame underneath with the primer, you'll see that when you get your final gold finish on. And you can see I'm not too anal about it, but I'm as careful as I can be for the time I want to allow. I still think finishing your own frames is just a much nicer quality than buying manufactured frames. So I make the frames out of poplar wood, and I cut and miter the edges, and I router the outer edge and then stick that on the frames. So this process can take many days. I put 3 coats of primer on. Then I put a coat of thin glue size on. Then I leaf. And then I glaze to dull down the very bright gold. And then I put a varnish over the top. So it just takes persistence. And I'm not a pro at this. I watch many people on YouTube gold leafing, and there are people out there that can be quite quick and efficient and accurate, and you'll see when I get to the leafing how I approach it. So I'll speed up here and we'll just get through these frames and move on to the next part. I normally listen to a nice podcast while I'm working, and I always reward myself after I get done. Here we go. Everything is primed. Lots of frames. I just put my primer in a plastic tub. Now I'm going to use the glue size. I clean the frames off to make sure there's no residual lumps or bumps or cat hair or anything. And then I spread a thin layer of adhesive. Now I can put up to 10% water in this adhesive so that it's really quite thin. And you try and spread it as thin and as evenly as you can. And then I just set it aside to dry for 2 hours. I normally put a cardboard box over the top, so when I'm moving around there's no dust flying and landing in the glue. You want to keep it as clean as possible. So when I do a large batch of frames like this, I can put the glue size on the first one and then slowly go through all the frames. And by the time I get to the end of the frames, I'm ready to start leafing on the first frame that I started. It's good to have good light. Natural light is best. Like a cloudy day, not a sunny, bright day. A cloudy day, but lots of windows, and that prevents the glare. So we'll speed up through this. Like I said, I do the whole batch in one go, unless I know that I can't finish all of them in the amount of time that I have. And then I'll just break it up, maybe sometimes into 3 sections. Like I'll do 10 frames, 10 frames, 10 frames. It's fairly methodical. It's the same thing over and over. But I like it. It's not like painting a painting where you have to figure lots of things out. This is systematized. You can just do it. And it's a nice break from cerebral problem solving. So it's been 2 hours, and now I'm going to use the gold leaf. It's not real gold, it's metal leaf. I would not spend my money on gold leaf at this stage in my career. I think that I would be too scared about wasting money. I'm not that good at putting leaf on. It's an experiment, and yeah, I would go check out some other websites and have a look how the professionals do it. The first one I saw was from Tallow Gold, I think. You can find them online on YouTube, and they sell a kit, but they're out of Brazil or somewhere, and so it has to be shipped overseas when you can actually get all these supplies just at your local, probably Michael's or Hobby Lobby. So the goal is to get one sheet on nice and smooth and without rips and tears. But as you see, I started off quite good actually here, and then it just gets kind of messy, and I use my fingers. You have to make sure your fingers are really clean with no oil or residue on them. Ideally, I would wear gloves, but I'm just one of those people. I don't stop to put gloves on, and I rarely have them in the house. So what I'm doing is I'm just pressing the gold leaf onto the glue, just gently brushing it with my finger. I don't put the glue size on the edges, outside edges of the frame. I leave those the primer color, and I quite like that look. So metal leaf isn't all that expensive, and it looks really nice. I think my frames are quite professional looking. But of course, because I make everything myself, they're reasonably cost. It depends if you have the time to do it. And I used to always make my own frames, cut my own wood, pick my own wood, and for the past several years I've had a friend that for some reason has decided that I am a worthy cause, and he is happy to make frames for me, which is absolutely brilliant because all this stuff takes time away from my art studio. And while I do love to have my own frames, being away from the studio can cause some anxiety at times. I tend to make my frames in the summertime because I have access to the outdoors for when I'm sanding in between coats. So the process takes planning. You can just jump in, and then if you get pulled away because of life and then you forget to wait your 2 hours and then put your gold leaf on, then you know it can be a bit hazardous. So you really have to plan what you're doing. And I methodically go around and put the leaf on every frame. I've probably been working this way for maybe 6-7 years longer. But I finally got this down to a method that I quite like. Then I go back to each frame and I get some cheesecloth and I just rub it down. You'll find there's lots of metal leaf that sprinkles everywhere. And I collect it in a tub, and then I can use that for little areas that I've missed. The next step is I take my oil paints and I mix red and blue, ultramarine blue, and just any red, cad red. And I add white to make a lavender color. A bluey lavender is my favorite. And I'll bounce back and forth to like a reddy lavender and then a more blue lavender. But I think the blue lavender is probably the nicest for me. And the lavender is a complementary color because the gold is yellow. And so what this does is it balances out that gold so it's not so gaudy. And I really like this look. It makes it look a little bit aged, not so gaudy. And what I do is I paint it all over the gold. And I'm using liquid here, so it's quite a thin paint. And then once I've got the whole thing covered, I'll take a paper towel and gently brush it in with the paper towel. And what happens is the majority of the paint comes off, but there's a residual that just coats it lightly, and then it's a little bit darker in the crevices. Of course, I should absolutely have gloves on here because I am using liquid, but I do my best to not touch the paint. And of course, you want a ventilation while you're doing this. If you're using liquid has cobalt dryer in it, and so you don't really want to breathe this in for any long periods of time. So you either wear a ventilator, a respirator, or you do this outside. And I advise to wear plastic gloves. Toxins can go in through your fingers and your skin. So some of the frames, they have inconsistencies and little pieces that don't have any gold on, and you can see the primer through, and I like that. That all adds character to the frame. And you can use anything. You can use silver leaf with a bluish glaze, or you can use a bronze with maybe a blackish glaze. You can experiment. I just I got into the gallery circuit, and when I got into it, the gold frames were the thing. But I hated the gaudy gold that you got from some of the bigger companies out there, and I just like the handmade feel. I like everything to be handcrafted. In my kitchen, all my dishes are handcrafted. Or I shouldn't say all. I try to get them all to be handcrafted. I had my family living with me for a while, and there seemed to be a lot of breakages, and I haven't recovered from that yet. But I love the vibration of something that's made by hand and not by a machine. I can see the value in AI and stuff like that, but honestly, I do not like those AI pictures that are coming out online. I just think they look, it's just so fake. I don't like that. I like organic, earthy. So I just go through every frame and I add the glaze. And I usually let that dry overnight, or maybe even more. And then I will add a varnish. I use Gamsol. Is it Gamsol? Yeah, Gamsol. Regular varnish that I would put on my paintings. And I just put a thin coat on. And I let it sit for several days. And it's ready to pop a canvas in. So I hope this helped you in some way. I know I said I would make this video years ago. And I am finally getting around to pulling something together so you can see. And I think I'll also get one done in the workshop so you can actually see the process of miter cuts and doing the first part of the framing. Okay, have a great day. Bye.